Coalition too can share with you what we've been doing for the last, about a year. And some of you have asked before, well, Grand Canyon University is no longer interested in El Rio, so why are you still here? Why are you still trucking along? Well, hopefully with this presentation, you'll come away knowing the work of the coalition and why we still exist. I also want to thank the members of the coalition, who I'm sure didn't think that we would be here this long still working on the El Rio issue. The first members of the coalition were 50 individuals who met in May for the first time when they heard about El Rio. Those members, and I'd like to identify them and call them by name so that you all can know the hard work that these groups have been doing. Iron Horse Neighborhood Association, Miramonte Neighborhood Association, Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association, the Mexican American Golf Association, Feldman Neighborhood Association, Barrio Hollywood Neighborhood Association, Pie Ellen Neighborhood Association, Tucson Mountain Neighborhood Association, El Rio Men's Golf Club, West University Neighborhood Association, Flowing Wells Neighborhood Association, United Steelworkers Local 937, Latin American Golf Association, Tucson Community Development and Design Center, Tucson Clean and Beautiful Incorporated, C-FAIRR Coalition for Fairness, Accountability, Integrity, Respect, and Responsibility, La Capilla San Cosme, Barrio Viejo, City of Tucson Landscape Advisory, and 9 other organizations of neighborhood associations and groups that were members. The group that I read officially have supported the coalition by a vote of their membership. We also have representatives that were part of the coalition and were active. We have Sally Ann Gonzalez, who is here with us today, Bruce Wheeler, and Macario Saldate. Those individuals have been working on this issue and being members of the coalition. I also want to recognize 2 people that are here today also, our Councilmember Karen Ulick and candidate Ben Buehler Garcia. And I'd like to start off that the El Rio Coalition wasn't formed to bash city elected officials or city administrators and their staffs. The coalition was formed, 1, to save El Rio for public use and to keep it as a public facility, to keep it from being taken and disposed of without community input. Along the path in trying to obtain documents as to what happened, what got El Rio to be put up for bid, we encountered that there was secrecy and lack of openness and how non-transparent our city government really is. So the next goal of the coalition was to seek truth and transparency. The coalition filed a lawsuit asking for records regarding Grand Canyon University and the El Rio Golf Course. We requested these records on May 13, 2013. We won the lawsuit but not the war. With access to these records, we have uncovered deception and misinformation generated by those public servants that are there to serve us. Tina Pacheco, Salomon Valdenegro, and Bill Reisner have worked long and hard doing research and going over the information that we were able to obtain. There's still a lot more information that we haven't gotten. Bill has also worked very hard on our case with the lawsuit that we filed and doing research. So they will be the first ones to present to you. We also have speakers representing other groups that have encountered the same lack of trust and lack of transparency from our city officials and staffs, and other organizations like Pima Community College. With us are Susan Caldwell from the Bus Riders Union, and who's been dealing with the Ronstadt Transit Center. We also have Chris Gans from the West University Neighborhood Association, and Ruth Beaker from the Neighborhood Infill Coalition, and Mario Gonzalez from the Coalition for Fairness, Accountability, Integrity, Respect, and Responsibility, or C-FAIRR. They will also be making a presentation of their dealings with city government. I'm sure you'll have questions, and all our speakers will be answering those questions, but we hope that you will hold them, and so don't forget, write them on a piece of paper so that we can get them answered after the presentations. We also want to thank John Brakey, who's here, who's been doing the filming and helping us with gathering information and the taping of the hearing when we filed the lawsuit. But to get to today's presentation, I need to give you a little background regarding El Rio. 40 years ago, city elected officials, and at that time they were all Democrats also, promised the West Side community that they would build a park in an area that was void of any public park facilities. They reneged, causing the community to organize, take over El Rio Golf Course, and demand the city government keep its word. Ultimately, to the west of El Rio Golf Course, Joaquin Murrieta was developed, Joaquin Murrieta Park. Joaquin Murrieta Park and El Rio Golf Course have coexisted for 40 decades. This urban green space, which is El Rio Golf Course, is a space of over 100 acres and has over 700 trees valued at $6 million by the city's Landscape Advisory Board. It also supports a diverse population of birds and wildlife, and not only that, but it also is a facility for the First Tee program. It's a golf program for children that goes beyond teaching golf. It really teaches principles of integrity, respect, and things that all our children should know. But then on January 16, 2012, area residents and community members were invited to a meeting hosted by Council Member Regina Romero and the City Parks and Recreation Department to complete the dreams for El Rio and Joaquin Murrieta. And that, on the board in the back, you can see that as you can walk out, how we were invited to this meeting. And at that meeting, Council Member Romero stating that we are there to save El Rio. 3 subsequent meetings were all attended by residents from the surrounding areas and other people who were invited that were members of the old El Rio Coalition or community members who have been active in the community. And for 4 months, those of us attending these meetings were doing our part to plan for the future of El Rio Golf as a park and golf family facility as unanimously approved by the Mayor and Council on October 23rd, 2012. And that's why I say we're almost at that anniversary in a few days. So that recommendation that the Mayor and Council said, immediately start planning for that El Rio to become a family golf and park facility. But on May 8th, 2013, we were kicked in the face with the first time ever the revelation that we saw in the Arizona Daily Star that El Rio had been offered by the city to Grand Canyon University. The community was deceived. We were working on the October 23rd recommendation, and here we are, planning for Joaquin Murrieta and El Rio all this time, all this energy, and yet to know on May 8th, no public meeting, no public input, that El Rio had been offered to Grand Canyon University. Now, this is the first time in the history of the city that an in-use public facility has been put out on the block. So, what I'd like to say is that El Rio Coalition was about saving El Rio. Grand Canyon University really just embodies what has been happening in the city, what has been happening with the planning that doesn't include citizen participation, that you're planning in one way and the city's going in a different direction from what those that have attended meetings are thinking. So if, again, with Grand Canyon University, you'll find from our presentations what the city was gifting Grand Canyon University. We're not opposed. Grand Canyon can come and buy private land at the going rate of about $6 to $9.47 a square foot, as opposed to the $3.50 that the city was willing to part with it. You'll get more information on that. But again, I just want to say that El Rio has been about saving this public facility for our future. We as taxpayers have paid for that facility. And also, the second and most important, probably to all of you here and those of you who have dealt with city, is wanting to trust our officials and have transparency in the dealings that they have with us as their public. So thank you, and I'd like to start with Tina Pacheco, Sal Baldenegro, and Bill Reisner, who will start the presentations. Thank you.
of introduction. Again, my name is Tina Pacheco, and I had to do a bit of work to find the El Rio Coalition too. They don't have a website. It took me a little bit, and through the saveelrio.com, I was able to get connected to the group. Because when I heard about the executive session, I was very upset that something like this could happen without any public input. So that's how I came. SaveElRio.com, we have a lot of the documents posted that we're going to talk about. Everything that I have has a source. And anyone who's old enough to remember Jack Schaefer, this is an old Jack Schaefer photo of El Rio during the LPG years. As I said, October 23rd, we had a unanimous vote to immediately develop a plan. And basically the plan was to take golf out of the asset for-profit group and put it back into Parks and Rec, and making it more of a family-centered golf experience. In addition, there were some other things that would help us tremendously right now, and one was to develop an ordinance that annually requires the presentation of Golf Fund audited financial results. At a minimum, the presentation will include operating revenue compared to operating expenses, net income and loss, actual results compared to budget, things that any business would be doing. Unfortunately, that part hasn't been done either, and we'll come to that towards the end of the presentation. So what happened? El Rio Coalition 2, unfortunately, has had to sue. We did a public records request. We've done several public record requests. The last one we got in September, and so we had to go to court to get the information. But in middle of January 2013, TRIO invited Grand Canyon University to Tucson, or so they tell us, and we don't really know if Grand Canyon approached Tucson or if it was the other way around. For those of you that don't know, TRIO is the Tucson Regional Economic Opportunities, Inc. And the important part for us is the Inc. Because they're a private corporation, they don't have to share anything they do on the city's behalf. So when we sent them a letter asking them for what they had about this, well, first of all, you had to push the button for them to come to the door to let you in to deliver the letter asking for the information, but they denied the information because they are a corporation. So anything that TRIO does is not transparent to the citizens of Tucson. One of the other things I would point out here for people that have concerns is TRIO was the coordinator of this request for proposal, but yet they also seem not to do any vetting, also seem not to check into this information. And as we go along, you'll see some of it makes you wonder why nobody asked any questions. On February 18th, about a month later, unbeknownst to all Tucsonans, the city manager offered El Rio as the city's proposed site for Grand Canyon, citing it as prime real estate with mature landscaping and all the infrastructure there. Sewage, electric, power. If anyone's ever built somewhere in the middle of no place, how much is it going to cost you to get power to where you're trying to go to? All of that was there. Also on February 18th, the city sought an appraisal for El Rio. 2 days later, they got it. As requested, we are appraising the underlying land as if vacant and unimproved. Now, you can argue whether that's an appropriate appraisal to be made. We already know what the landscaping's worth, but at the very least, it's inaccurate because all of the infrastructure is there. You're within a mile of interstate, and nowhere else are you going to find 100 acres. So we can debate whether it was the best possible price the city could get, but it certainly wasn't an accurate description. We asked the city manager about this when we went to trial, and here's what he had to say.
Is that in a writing somewhere?
It might be, but I can't recollect if it is or not.
So you don't know if there's a written appraisal that you saw?
Correct. I don't ever remember seeing a written appraisal.
Okay, so he doesn't recall if there was a written appraisal or not. And that was done in July when we went to court. In February, again about a month later, the city manager's office calls the city council members to let them know El Rio is a possible site. They didn't tell them, I don't know, but maybe they did tell them it was the only site for Grand Canyon, and that it would be a step-by-step process. And between that time frame and April 1st, there were a lot of emails back and forth about going to chapel and how many students and all kinds of questions. But on April 1st, also known as April Fool's Day, the city set up a conference with the construction manager at Grand Canyon, their general contractor, and we have him here. From everything you can find, an outstanding man named Butch Gillespie, who's done work for Grand Canyon for over a decade. They're civil engineer, and they met with the head of the planning department, and they had a whole length of agenda items talk about permits and zoning issues. And if I can do an aside, if anybody knows, I've not been able to find one of the agenda items asked if at-risk development was allowed. And I do not know what that means. So if there's anyone here or anyone who knows someone who knows what that means, I would love to know. Okay, but this was a discussion to talk about how do we start building. And also in the RFP, they wanted to start construction July, August, September. So we had a very fast time frame on this. On May 3rd, also done in a big hurry, they did an economic impact study that says by 2020, and I've heard all sorts of different numbers, but an $841 million impact. $841 million in the middle of a recession. May 8th, the first time two sons learned from the star that it's going to be sold or leased. On that same day, unbeknownst to us, the city manager sends an offer letter to Grand Canyon University. We understand, and these are all posted on our site, saveelrio.com. You can read the offer letter yourself. We understand that your top priority is a long-term ground lease with a below-market lease payment. Now, I don't know what below-market lease means to you, but to me, it means you're getting it for less than it's valued at. It's subject to final approval by the mayor and council, but they're prepared to make the following offer. An annual lease of $257,961. They waive a bunch of stuff, but the one that caught my eye the most is that they're waiving 100% of city building permit fees, estimated to be approximately $1.8 million. Now, I think that number would probably be less because I don't think they're going to build everything they said they were going to build, but they're waiving 100%. The building inspectors, we still have to pay them to go out and do the inspections, but we're going to waive that money. Don't have enough money for police. Every time you see a pothole, remember we got $1.8 million we were willing to give away.
They also waived $2.3 million
Oh, yes.
construction sales tax.
Yes, and a few other incentives as well. Well over $4 million
A lot of waiving went on.
in incentives. But this one I particularly point out because it's not on the list of the published 21 incentives the city usually gives. This one was an extra special one. The letter also advised Grand Canyon that there's something called the gift clause in Arizona. Is everybody here familiar with the gift clause? It's part of the Arizona Constitution for over 100 years, and it was originally enacted because everyone was giving land to the railroads, and the railroads were getting land for free, and the city or municipalities may or may not get any benefit from it. But the city said, well, we think we're okay because we're going to get direct sales tax. Well, in 2010, there was a court case, the Arizona State Supreme Court, Turkin versus Gordon. 2 years later, the Supreme Court ruled. And you can read this on the Arizona State Supreme Court website. Just go to Turkin versus Gordon. And it says, we conclude that compliance with the gift clause cannot be assumed because the indirect public benefits may be substantial. Promoting economic development, increased employment, and an enhanced tax base are legitimate purposes for the city to pursue. But we must also examine the means by which the city seeks to further those purposes. Even if the potential benefits are great, they are not sufficient to overcome the prohibition of the gift clause against donations or subsidiaries to private persons. I'm not a lawyer, but below market value, gift clause. Okay, May 11th, after reading about El Rio, Ward 6 Council Member Steve Kasajek wrote to the city manager's office saying, I see bad value at multiple levels of this procedure. This was on May 11th. Okay? Oh, you might have the dates backwards here. On May 10th, the city manager's office lets Mr. Kasajek No, that its issues can be discussed in executive session. That's on Friday. Okay, on May 13th, the city gives a minimum 24-hour notice and places the item on the agenda. They didn't do it when they wrote the letter on the 8th. They didn't do it on Friday when they got Mr. Kosacic's email. They didn't do it Monday at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or 11 o'clock. They waited until noon, the absolute latest time to put it on the agenda. On May 14th, after meeting executive session, the City Council voted 5-2 to direct staff as discussed in executive session to continue discussions subject to due diligence with Grand Canyon University. Regina Romero had this to say.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Since there's concern about the conversation and how this particular executive session item was posted as, it's posted as a possible sale or lease. And in fact, it is not a conversation about the sale or lease. It's a conversation about the possibility of Grand Canyon University and start of negotiations.
Okay, and one thing I'd like to say at this point, before I go into the pitch, is that just last month, we finally received from the city officials the request for proposal that Grand Canyon submitted to them. And our original request for proposal was done in May. So June, July, August, September, 4 months. But they also did a proposal for, the cities in the East Valley, up in Phoenix. And that was public knowledge in the Republic in December. Their process was completely open. There was no secret. There was no project study. Oh, we can't talk about this. And when we did have stories appear in the Star, it was only after Grand Canyon made a public statement to their shareholders and to the Wall Street analysts. All on public record. And the pitch that we got, Grand Canyon is good, El Rio is bad. Part of that pitch said that in the next 6 years, between 2014 and 2020, and I've heard various numbers, 6,000 students, 7,000 students, somewhere in that range. Where are these students coming from? Because you need the students to get the employees. And what you see there, 250, 200, what Grand Canyon said publicly, and what the economic impact analysis, which we posted on the website, you can go read it yourself, says that 20% of the jobs are going to be outside of Tucson. Well, where are they going to be? They're going to be in Phoenix. It's a perfect business model. It makes perfect sense. There's nothing wrong with it. They're not going to duplicate IT. They're not going to duplicate admissions. All of those high-paying jobs stay in Phoenix. So even though you hear people saying, oh, 1,000 jobs, there are never, ever 1,000 jobs. At the most, maybe 800. But where are these students coming from? Okay, I did not have the top numbers on Christian high school grads. We got that on the public records dump in August. In Tucson in 2013, there were 426 Christian high school graduates. 300 of those are from South Point. In Phoenix, by contrast, there's almost double that, 1,000. In all of Pima County, not just Tucson, but all of Pima County, and this data is available from the State Department of Education. You can get it by county, by school, by district. There were 8,120 graduates. Now in Phoenix, in Maricopa County, they had 38,000. It's really easy to see how Grand Canyon could grow their student body by 1,000. Okay? Now tell me, how are they going to do it in Tucson? I do marketing studies. I look at demographic information. This is 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. That's very wishful thinking. Where are your demographic numbers to back this up? And if you don't have the number of students, you don't have dorms, and you do not have the number of employees. And I can also tell you, although I didn't put it on this slide, you don't have 60,000 a year jobs. Their faculty up in Phoenix, on average, gets paid $55,000. Half of the faculty works part-time. So, yes, adjuncts. Anybody here ever been an adjunct? How much do adjuncts get paid? But it's still a job. It's still one of those 800 jobs. And somehow it's going to average 60,000. Common sense, people. Why didn't anybody stop to ask any questions? I started my journey on Grand Canyon because they weren't really part of I wasn't concerned about Grand Canyon. I was like, wrong location. That's my only objection, wrong location. But my question was, why do they need 100 acres? The University of Arizona is a little over 200 acres. Why do they need 100 acres? And I started finding out more information. It just doesn't make sense. But no, TRIO didn't ask any questions. City staff didn't ask any questions. It's just great. Oh, 1,000 jobs, $60,000 here. Okay, let's see if this goes.
Did, at any point in this process, did the city do any independent examination of how many jobs might be involved?
Objection, relevance.
So Mr. Casalemas didn't get to answer the question. But I can tell you in fairness to him, he said, well, we went up and we saw the campus. They're going to duplicate the same thing here in Tucson. We saw the campus. And you know what? If they don't deliver on the jobs, we have clawbacks. So we don't give them the incentives that we said we were going to give them. Okay, how do you claw back the land? How do you get El Rio Golf Course back?
How do you replant the trees?
I don't know. I don't know. Also in the impact statement that was done, and again, in fairness to the person doing it, it was very hurried up, it was very rushed. There's a lot of questions about the numbers. If anyone's interested, I'd be more than happy to talk to you afterwards. But if you see this tall number in the middle here, student spending, nowhere has Grand Canyon said they're bringing students from somewhere else. These are students who would either go to Pima College or go to the University of Arizona. And there's nothing wrong with another university coming in and being an extra choice. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot claim economic development impact. They're already here. That's half of it. Okay? The other part, remember Butch Gillespie? He's a Phoenix contractor. The report says that construction could create an economic impact of $283.6 million in Tucson, along with supporting about 2,400 jobs and $98.3 million in personal income during construction. And that's where they do the exponential effect. You know, if I have a job and I spend $5, I give somebody else a job who has to give somebody else a job. Mr. Gillespie is a Phoenix contractor. Is anybody in this room in construction? Contractors generally take, and this is standard, 15 to 20% off the top to get their profit and to pay for their supervisor. So 15 to 20% of that economic development, just like 20% of any jobs, that money's going to Phoenix. That $1.8 million in construction benefits and permits you gave them, 20% of that benefit's going to be not enjoyed by us, but enjoyed by Phoenix. Also, generally speaking, and we don't know what Mr. Gillespie would have done, but generally, contractors work with subcontractors that they're comfortable with, that they've worked with before. In this economy, how many of those subcontractors would have driven down from Phoenix? I'm sure we would have got some drywalling jobs, some manual labor jobs, but this $28.36 million, how much do you think that's going to Phoenix? On our incentives, on our dime. And we still don't know how many jobs. Now we come to the historic golf course. The evil losing money golf course. Well, the problem is we never got our October 23rd resolution. We don't have a profit and loss statement. We do, after some work, come up with some interesting facts. One is El Rio pays about $200,000 a year in water. Silverbell down the street pays $2,000. Okay, that might account for you losing some money. Also, because of that fabulous First Tee program, El Rio gave up its driving range, so it lost that revenue. So how do you account for that? You know, there's no doubt that El Rio is not on par with some of the others, but our golfers tell us all the good carts left and went to that other midtown, Randolph Park, or I still call it Reed Park, and El Rio got all the crummy carts. You know, that really makes people want to come and use you. And in a time of budget cutting, what did the city cut? The marketing budget. So how do you market to get more work? But perhaps, I think everything was said best by Greg Hansen. He's a sports columnist at the Arizona Daily Star. On May 17th, he said, rebrand El Rio Golf Course. And he wrote, a stressed economy hit golf smack in the nose, and El Rio now struggles to break even. The city suggests it loses money, but I don't trust any of those figures. The accountants creatively toss around decimal points between the 5 city golf courses so adroitly that you don't know what to believe. But I do fear that Romero will keep firing, hoping to shutter El Rio because, well, nothing is sacred anymore. And again, all of these documents are posted, and you can read them for yourself at saveelrio.com. So.
Some of the stuff is also in the paper you all got. Some of it's in there.
Cites references, and some of those also are, I posted a few things in my presentation about the dream. The letter, the proposal letter is also there, so you can see some there. Scott.
Just one other thing, that was a great presentation and covered a lot of points. One other little point that I just want to make of the documents that we found is part of the deal with GCU is if they came in and they got the land, they said that they were going to build dormitories. And the dorms, according to the city documents, they were going to impose a rental tax. Now, the city council has never voted on a rental tax. I don't even think it's legal to have a rental tax for one section of town and not the whole part of town. But it's another one of those things where the selling of El Rio Golf Course was never something done in the open. These are policy decisions that are being made by the city council in the back room somewhere. And that's a real serious problem with dealing with the city and trying to trust the city when they're doing stuff in the back. And when the public documents, which we have, any citizen has a legal right to, we have to sue to get public documents. They're clearly in violation of the state gift clause. I mean, do you expect, Horn to do it? I mean, he's got a $500,000 of legal campaign contributions going on. You're not going to get justice from the Justice Department. So we have to create the kind of pressure to hopefully shame the council into doing the right thing. That's all I got to say.
Well, now that you mentioned the dorms, see, we've got so much information. We can't put it all in this presentation. But the dorm fees is, we have three sources. GCU, the actual CEO of GCU told its investors in New York, Wall Street, that they were not going to have dorms here. Then the VP of GCU told the Arizona Daily Star in February that there will be no dorms here. But yet in the city letter that Richard Miranda wrote to GCU, he says we're going to impose a 2% dorm fee on non-existent dorms. That makes sense. And that's because I think that they never thought that we would ever see this stuff. But how can you impose a 2% dorm fee on dorms that do not exist? It just doesn't make any sense.
So on that, we will have Mr. Reisner, who's been our attorney, and many of you know him, and the great work that he's done for the community and other groups. And he's been dealing with this for a long time. And we thank him again for being here, and he will present what he's been dealing with. Thank you, Bill.
It's been a special pleasure for me to be involved with El Rio 2, because I became a lawyer in 1968 and 1970. Myself, my law firm, my partner Mark Raven at the time were lawyers for the original El Rio outfit, the original struggle. A lot of people that are involved now were involved in. My friend Dave Yetman was out picketing. There's all kinds of people here that were involved with that.
And you built me out of jail twice.
And
You did.
I'm very hopeful that this is near the end of my legal career, and so it's nice to be here. I'm certified, lawyer handling, civil wrongful death, accident cases, stuff like that. But I've done some public records lawsuits, and I actually have to reveal some very dark secrets in the past. my family's a real estate business. I got my college degree in real estate. I took courses on appraisals. In law school, I was trained to be a real estate corporate lawyer, and I went to graduate business school for a year.
Phil, will you tell the name of your company, please?
The fly-by-night investment company. But, you know, just I'm going to start maybe in another place on that conversation. I mean, what I want to tell you, but when it comes to the appraisal, I mean, that's phenomenal. Appraisers all across the United States have a certain specific set of rules. You look at the highest and best use of a piece of property, you come up with the market value, and nowhere, anywhere would you do an appraisal and say, hey, we've got a piece of property with mature trees, it's next to these great water lines. In fact, for all these trees, we've got reclaimed water that comes in. Next to it is this phenomenal 48-foot main sewer line, and it's near I-10, it's on a major road, it's got all that stuff. But hey, pretend, oh, and we're offering this to give high-intensity zoning, whatever they want. But appraise this as if it was a dirt, you know, lot somewhere, and they come up with $3.50, you know, bucks a square foot. I own a lot in the barrio. I'm just fortunately sold a couple months ago, but it's 23 bucks a foot. There's a place, I think it's called the Bridges, that's down south. It doesn't nearly have the location that El Rio's. It's $10 a foot. You know, this is El Rio is you know, worth at least $50 million. And they offered it to these guys at, I think, $247,000 a year or something. You just pull out an annuity calculator, that's worth maybe $5 million bucks. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake in this thing. And what they've really fought hard to give us are the public documents, the public records. We don't have them yet. They lied about what's there. We know there's a lot more. But first, I want to touch a little about the public record laws, because Arizona, may not be the easiest thing to read, but it says public records and other matters, other papers in the office, in the custody of any officer, shall be open to inspection by any person at all times during office hours. Pretty simple. That's very simple. So on May 12th, Cecilia Cruz writes a letter to the city manager, Richard Miranda, requests to review public records. She said, I want to look at these things. And then she says that she'll be back on May 16th to review the records. So she's not demanding that they pull them out right then. But she gives it to them on May 12th. Then on May 13th, she gives a copy, and it's stamped with the clerk's office. Oddly enough, on May 13th is when the city posts a notice with 24 hours notice that they're going to have a special meeting with the mayor and council where they can talk about this stuff. Oddly enough, they will claim at that meeting that, oh, that's an executive thing and it's high level, and because we're now negotiating all of these papers, you know, we can't give you because we're now negotiating. They wouldn't turn over anything. On May 23rd, I delivered a letter to the city and said, look, cut the crap. If you don't give her these documents now, I said, allow me to please come to the point. I will immediately file a lawsuit
by 4 p.m. on May 24th, the next day, unless you've responded. So then they give her something, and you know, I've had a couple lawsuits with the city on public records, and I've dealt with other agencies in my 43 years of, I think it's 40, maybe it's 45 years of practicing law, 45. The city is now, they used to be the best before. They're now the worst. City has a lot of documents, maybe 4,000 employees. They got one guy who says he needs to read everything and check it out before you can see anything. You can't go in and see something, and especially something that might be anyway sensitive. But our laws not only are clear as to what's a public record, but how you get them. It simply says, the ARS 39-121, any person who's requested to examine public records and who's been denied access may appeal through a special action in Superior Court. Special procedure, go to Superior Court, and you can sue either the officer or the public body. You can sue the person, like Richard Miranda, who the request was made. You don't give it, sue you or the city clerk. It's real simple. And the city, of course, has a lawyer that defends all these things. Everybody knows these rules. And you can sue an officer. An officer means any person appointed to hold this elective office. So we do that. I sue on behalf of Cecilia. I filed verified complaint pursuant, citing that little statute, Cecilia Cruz versus Richard Miranda, city manager, and Roger Randolph, city clerk. We, you know, cite the jurisdiction of the court and so forth. And then I request that there be a hearing. Actually, I had some relatives coming with a vacation plan. I said, look, we'll have this hearing in July. That'll give you a chance. We're suing you in May to get all the documents that we need, and then beforehand, I want to take the deposition of the manager and the clerk. Fine. Then in July 8th, just before the depot, the city says, we're not going to show up. We have a motion for protective order. And what's it based on? It's based on lack of subject matter jurisdiction. They're saying superior courts can't hear these things. Crap. I mean, it just couldn't be bigger crap. How could the city's special lawyer saying you can't go to court on a public records lawsuit? Totally absurd. But that's the way they do it. They don't care. The city's thing is jerk you around, delay, make you sue. That's their standard process. I represented the Sam Hughes neighborhood. City wouldn't give them information. City says, no. Same lawyers, same stuff. They said, you know, it's not final. You can't have these documents until the mayor and council approve it. And then they filed, here are these cases. And there were cases like that in New Jersey, Kentucky, where the state statutes in those states said that you can't get it unless it's final. But not Arizona. It's ridiculous. We go to court, we're ready for trial, come in, the judge said, gee, I've read the Arizona laws, city, do you have any authority for this? I mean, you know, you're clearly wrong. Well, no, I guess not, you know. So they throw in the towel, so we don't have it here. Then, of course, the city fights to argue they shouldn't pay attorney's fees and costs. I had another case, same thing, you go to court, nah, they give up, no trial. City says, oh, but we're fighting attorney's fees and costs. In this case, we had to go to trial, and Cecilia doesn't get her costs back. And of course, no attorney's fees. But that's and the judges really bend over for the governmental bodies. The next claim was that lack of personal jurisdiction. Failure to state a claim. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that they would, you know, ask for a protective order. But Judge Lee gave them a protective order and did it before the time that I even could respond to oppose it. But I didn't much mind it because I figured, well, you know, these guys will, surely there's nothing here, you know, they'll just bring the papers and we won't have a trial, you know. But they wanted to go ahead with the trial. I want to point out that the laws, again, are real. Let me see if I can improve focus on this thing. Sorry, this should have the cases. Under the Public Records Law, an agency must make a good faith effort to conduct a search. And all time, the burden's on them to establish the adequacy of their search. And public records deny it if it's not prompt, and prompt means quick, and so forth. We're now 6 months later, and we don't have most of the documents that should be turned over. And that's just the way you do things. At trial, here's a little bit of transcript. This is a question of City Manager Miranda. Question for me: are you aware that the public records laws require all officers to maintain records of their duties? It's a tough question. City Manager Miranda: well, I'm not aware of that specific requirement. Chris Casalemas, the guy in charge of this real estate deal from the city, I don't like this focus deal, but so is it your testimony you're not aware that completed contracts and deals by the city are always public? Answer: I believe information that goes to mayor and council gets approved by mayor and council is public. You know, but again, I'm not an attorney, and I don't know what's a public record or not. So it is, and in the great game you always have when you deal with the city attorney's office is they say, you know, we just do what our clients say, and the mayor and council are our clients. And then, of course, then you talk to the council people, and they have no control of it. And I will say that Karen Ulick, that's here, has been our champion on trying to get public records. She did instruct the city manager to turn over what they could. She's got one vote. I had an email exchange with her, and she actually got Mike Rankin, the city attorney, to get involved in the email and respond. But she's one of the bunch, you know. They haven't responded. We went to court, and they told the judge that there were only 2 documents that they hadn't turned over. And I think we've got 400 pages since then, and there's all kinds of key stuff since then that they haven't given us. I have a hearing coming up the 28th of this month, and I said, look, I want some discovery, because there's a couple ways that you find out where the records are around. One, if you're dealing with an honest agency and honest people, then they'll produce records and do their job because the public law says you're supposed to. Or you've got to do deposition and ask people who they met with, where did they go, what kind of documents, how did this stuff come around. The next thing I want to talk about is there's a problem with the city that's the huge problem, which is the structural problem. The problem is that it is unbelievable what city staff does with no direction. So in this case, I asked Chris Casalemas, and he says there's a list of city properties that the city has for sale. So when Grand Canyon says, we want a big piece of property and cheap, they go, okay, God, yeah. And we want it with lots of amenities and great locations. Yeah, good, yeah, we'll look, see what we have. And so then I said, well, is El Rio on that list? Well, no. Was El Rio ever offered for sale? No. It was a piece of property that staff put out there, along with other properties, to say, here's some city-owned properties. Do any of these fit your need? Of course, how does staff decide what to offer about public property? How does staff do that? Oh, well, we just go through city inventory and, see what's on the list. And was this at the direction of the mayor and council? No, the mayor and council did not direct us to sell Rio. Did the mayor and council authorize you? No, they didn't authorize that. And furthermore, as we mentioned before, there's never been a park sold in the city of Tucson. You saw before that on October 23rd, there'd been an instruction for the city staff to develop a plan for El Rio. Okay, now city staff is offering to sell El Rio. You're aware the city staff told you to do a study, correct? And I understand you're not aware of any study actually done. No, I don't know if it was done or wasn't done. So the staff are told to do it. The guy who wants to sell the stuff, who's in charge of it, he doesn't know if anything's there. The level of incompetence is over the wall. The city manager asked him about it. Well, he's a retired police chief, nice guy, maybe a good manager. He's never done a real estate deal. He didn't know any of these things either. Yeah, this is one where he's not aware of any parks being offered. This one is, McLaughlin is asking Miranda this question. And when you sent the proposed contract terms to Grand Canyon, was that perfectly within your normal sequence of events? Answer, yes. So that's the way they do business. The cities, and I want to look at the terms of this deal that the staff, the detailed terms they sent, is phenomenal and mind-boggling. This is May 8th, so this is a week before they had the meeting where the council for the first time was informed about this. And he's touting this thing, hey, we're really glad you're coming. The site's on a major arterial, it's flat, mature landscaping, has all the utilities on. All that's true for sure. We understand your top priority is a long-term ground lease with a below market rate, that's right. And we're offering a long-term 50-year ground lease with an option to renew for subsequent terms with an average lease payment of $257,000. Told you that's worth, maybe $5 million, more or less. He points out here, we got some problems. To further this goal, we're going to have to work together in partnership with you because we got a little problem. A primary issue is the city of Tucson is lacking in park space in this area that we want to sell 114 through, And we're going to have to break our contract with First Tee. But, this letter from Miranda, who gets this thing? Liz Miller, deputy city manager, assistant city manager, another assistant city manager, planning policy director, director of, man, everybody's into all of these details. And let's look here. This is something that the city put together. And here's one figure, and you can kind of get the drift of how this stuff works. Pima County property tax savings over 5 years. This is a trio figure, $7,260,000. Okay, so if they sell this to these guys, the title remains in the city. They're offering a 50-year ground lease. You also saw in the letter that they say, that he said 50 years, but you can get extensions. So when the city leases it, the title's in the city's name. They're saving $7,260,000 over 5 years. So over the first 50-year lease, that's $72 million taxes not paid. to the city. That's that one number. But and here's something, and the kind of stuff that we don't have. Here's a document that we have no idea who put this together. We have no idea what meetings, how it occurred. City of Tucson proposes a development and lease purchase agreement, this DLPA. Well, of course, that's the special thing where they've told them that we'll give you any kind of zoning you want for high density zoning, your apartment houses, tall things, you want to put in a mall, all of that stuff. We'll give you all of that. You don't see that in the appraisal, of course, because it's that kind of thing you're required to put in appraisals unless you pay somebody to give you something that is not useful. So he says here, the basic terms of this lease purchase, this one is an initial term for 15 years with 9 successive 5-year options. During the initial term, a portion of the lease payments you can apply toward the ultimate purchase. So that's pretty cool deal too. You get a little credit for that. You rent to own eventually, but it's 60 years later. Here's a great one. After the initial 15-year term of the lease, the purchase price will remain steady for years 16 through 60. Hey, how would you like to get that? It's a little Tucson real estate, maybe 45 years ago with a fixed amount that you could buy, 45, 60 years later. Absolutely phenomenal. And the university will be able to exercise this, anytime. Of course, part of this fee applies to it. And then there are all kinds of, it's like we're paying them to take it off our hands. There's what they call adjustments. The purchase option price may be adjusted through negotiating terms in the lease depending on the extent of any extraordinary development expenses, which may include problems with the sewer, electric, gas, certain public improvements, So not only are we giving you this stuff free, you're going to get, $70, $80 million tax-free stuff. We'll give you all of this other stuff for this city park that's mature that we're short on park space for. But hey, that's just the way the staff does with all that details, and then bring it to the group that has pixie dust on them and doesn't figure out what's going on. So last week was something that was pretty phenomenal. I'm sure many of you saw this one too. Rio Nuevo probe bad, but not criminal. So the Attorney General's office says the Rio Nuevo debacle may have squandered millions of dollars, but no one's going to, be behind bars, which is fine. I understand that. Believe me, Horn, with his trouble, he's not picking fights. So I mentioned $250 million, and even though the 18-month investigation uncovered ample evidence that the city, Rio Nuevo Board, and others botched the projects from the start, but the bumbling didn't rise to criminal level. So what's the city to do about this? Steve Kazachik, the council person with the brain, says, many of us have been saying all along that there's a fundamental and legal difference between gross financial mismanagement and criminal wrongdoing. I agree. Hopefully, we can get focused on managing this taxpayer money and put the witch hunt to bed. You want to know where that $250 million went? It's just a witch hunt. Mayor Rothschild says it's been a long time, and it has long been time. We look forward about downtown and not back to find out how all this stuff could have been squandered. So I sent a public records request to the Attorney General's office, and I fortunately was able to talk to the guy that did the investigation. And what I'd asked for is, gosh, you know, I'm not disputing, you know, there's no criminal stuff. I haven't looked at this stuff. But there's massive mismanagement. They found that. So I asked him, I said, look, I'd like you to send to me as a public records request all the data that you've sent the city that they've asked for. Because obviously the city would have been interested in massive mismanagement. And the mayor and council would, because obviously they set policy and manage the city. And you'd think when every city deal is bad, and really bad, again and again and again and again, as managers, they would want to know that. Prosecutor said, you know, that's interesting. He says, during this entire investigation, no one from the city or Rio Nuevo has ever checked to see how it's going. And he says, you know, I've learned a lot when I looked. There's no criminal prosecution, but I've seen what was wrong, and I would have thought they might ask what I've learned and what could be corrected, what could be done to correct this problem. But no one has ever asked for the city. So you kind of see what the problems are. We can, you know, if you know city council people, I know them, nice people. Structurally, there's a problem there. It's something you'll never read about in the newspaper because we don't have one in Tucson. And all they do is send out ads and do what the growth lobby wants, but they don't even have investigative reporters. It's just nothing that's going to happen in the city. $250 million is wasted. Every one of those city deals, every one, is absolutely horrible. And is the same staff there? By and large, they got rid of Hine, but Hine got rid of the planning department, and they've not put one back. So whoever comes into the city doesn't have people that know up from down and look at it. And the staff has free rein. So anyway, that's my main comment.
And we have, as I said before, we have Susan Caldwell from the Bus Riders Union dealing with the Ronstadt Transit Center, Chris Gans from the West University Neighborhood Association, who's been dealing with the city on the towers and the building there. We also have Ruth Beaker, who has been very involved, especially with the neighborhoods closest to, you know, downtown and the university. She's with the Neighborhood Infill Coalition, and we have Mario Gonzalez, who has been with C-FAIRR and has been working with the issues dealing with the other issue, Pima College. So if we can ask them up, and maybe we can take just a few minutes to set up the chairs. I also want to say that Councilmember Cunningham is with us here today also. So if you can come up, and maybe, would you like to sit or behind him? What would work best for you? Sit? Okay.
Years and have really appreciated the bus service. I didn't have a car, and that was my sole means of transportation for about 4 years after moving there. And soon after I started taking the bus and living in Armory Park, I joined the Bus Riders Union. And the Bus Riders Union has mainly been concerned with keeping the fares down and keeping the bus routes. But about 2 years ago, we began to hear rumblings about Ronstadt Center being eliminated from the downtown. After all, you know that it's been the great wish of developers, Downtown Partnership and Trio, to develop the downtown and make some money, for one thing. And of course, nobody wants to just look at the riffraff in the bus station. So that we began to get a little nervous about that. And also then the streetcar coming, that was also rumor. There again, this is all rumors. Nobody ever tells you anything, you just hear it. So when it became clear that this was happening, we contacted Karen Ulick's office, who has been a supporter of the Bus Riders Union, and began to have meetings with the different stakeholders concerned with developing the downtown, business development, downtown Tucson partnership, different stakeholders, realtors, and we began having regular meetings discussing matters concerning the Ronstadt Center, like how are we going to find out what the people really want? So it was decided to take Tran decided to take a survey, a public survey, and we all became involved in that. This was all very good. We were all concerned with the Ronstadt Center, what was going to happen. There were many points of view, many stakeholders, and these were regular meetings, and this was very healthy. This was community process, which we really feel is very important, especially when you're dealing with a public area that's giving public service to a majority of Tucson. This is how they get to work. A lot of people, this is how they get to doctor's offices. This is how they do their shopping, and this is a main central area downtown, a public space. So we hung in there with that, and we also, as the group, the Tucson Bus Riders Union, decided to have a public forum, which we had on April 2nd, which was very successful. Many different groups, many different people speaking. We had a meal. The public really expressed themselves. It was wonderful. And I think it was a first for Tucson. And the people were just totally supportive, and we did find out what they wanted. It wasn't commercial real estate. What they really wanted was improvement of the Ronstadt Center, not remodeling it into a mall. That's what they really want, and that's what we heard, and we got that on their cards. That's what they wanted. So we expected this to continue, this momentum of public support, input, communication, cooperation. But after April 2nd, that was it. We were cut off from Board 3. No more public meetings, couldn't even get through on the phone. And finally, after about 6 weeks, somebody suggested that I go over there and see if I could find David Higuera and get an idea about what was going on. And I finally did go over there. I was on an errand, and I went to the office, and he came out and spoke to me, and I said, David, what's going on? We have no idea. Nobody will answer our phone calls or our emails. What's going on? You know, we had a really good momentum going of public community process, something that you don't hear about in Tucson. And he said, well, it's been turned over to the city manager's office. And I knew that was it. And it has been it. That was it. And there were no more meetings. And I think finally there's been a little bit of communication after that, maybe with Councilman Ulick's board, but very little. And we had no idea, and we were told to hang in there. And then eventually there would be a public hearing that Corky Poster, who was the person who was concerned with the development and how it was to be done, and meeting with the stakeholders. He was meeting with stakeholders, real estate people, partnership people, etc. Probably Trio. And that's what we were told. So here it gets to be May, and we were supposed to have a public hearing maybe in May, but no. It's going to put off until August. So I went away, and I was away about 7 weeks, but I was in contact with Bus Riders Union people by email. And I was told, no public hearing. But if you're back, August 14th, there's going to be a public hearing because the city council has announced that the low-income fares on the van tran will be raised, maybe. This is a proposal. So that will be a public hearing on the 14th. I believe it's the 14th, if my mind isn't scrambled. So I got back on the 12th, and by the 14th I was down in the city council chambers for that public hearing. And thank goodness, after a lot of testimony by a lot of poor people who had a very difficult time getting there, they of course were not going to raise the fares on the low-income disability people. So we did get through that. So no, there has been no public hearing, but we were told on the 24th of September we would have a study session, and that we would be told exactly the process that the city manager's office had gone through, what documents they looked at, et cetera, go through Corky Poster's plan and what he did. He would speak. And so I called the city manager's office and left a message that I would like to know if people would be allowed to speak. But obviously, if the downtown partnership and that focus, the business focus, the city council focus, the downtown, trio, et cetera, if that way of thinking was presented, then obviously the other stakeholders, the people who cared about public space, the people who were concerned with the structure, the old structure of the Ronstadt Center in the old city, which is indeed Barrio Ronstadt, that's what I call it. Those people who are said to be not movers, they don't want anything done, they won't even move a brick. Those people ought to be given a chance to speak too, so we have a balanced report. And I got the message back, left on my cell phone, that there was going to be no decision made about going for RFP. It was just, to be a catch-up on documents that were looked at, what Corky has been doing. So we didn't need to get all stressed out. We went to Karen Ulick's office, and she told us that no, it was just going to be a regular report. We didn't need to have 400 people there with a hot dog truck. So but we did have a few people there, and it just went like that. This Nicole Ewing gave her report, and Corky gave his report. And one of the council people proposed that let's go forward with this RFQ. I'm sick of waiting around. This is ridiculous. And in 2 seconds, Karen was supposed to stand by us. She was with it. Everybody was going to go vote right then for an immediate RFQ process, trying to obtain RFQ, trying to get real developers to submit their plans. And then someone spoke, I can't remember who, one of the council people saying, hey, let's slow down. We don't need to do this today. Thank heavens. Let's push it ahead. So it's been pushed ahead a few months. So not until December, January do we have to go through this again. So it's not been taken off the table. It's not been, no RFQ. It's just pushed ahead a few months. So the proposal was passed to pursue the obtaining of proposals to develop the Ronstadt Center. Not the whole Ronstadt Center, but what could be done. What are the possibilities of getting some commercial development in the Ronstadt Center? So that indeed was just refuting what we had been told and what we've been working on for months and months. So now we are in the process of deciding what in the world we're going to do and trying to do it and trying to get help. And we have learned that so far they have decided to have a committee to decide the first step of getting the RFQ, and that this committee is mainly city manager's office. There's no people from the bus riders union. There's no people, you know, from the rest of the community. There's no people from like Downtown Neighborhoods Association, DNARC. And so that's horrifying, and that is not appropriate. I think the city council should be able to direct this, as Bill Reisner has said. The city council, it's their responsibility to direct this kind of activity, committee, etc., thought process, not the city manager's office. So, of course, we are feeling extremely violated, and we have no confidence at all in the city council and the mayor to be responsible for what happens in Tucson. We're the people, we pay the taxes. This is a public space paid for by public money. It's a public service that is absolutely essential to the people of Tucson. So this is very serious. And so I really commend El Rio for having this today and for all that you've done, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Cecilia,
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I just provide a real quick update? Because it's true that the manager's office wanted to move it fast track, and they said as soon as procurement's involved, public input isn't allowed. We've said then don't put it in procurement yet. There is a round table of people, including the bus riders union, that's going to be involved in before this even gets in our procurement pipeline. So I just want to provide that update, but I don't discount anything that Susan's expressed by way of the challenges we're facing in this process.
Chris Gans, I'm current president of Western University Neighborhood Association, also a member of Core Bank. I got engaged with El Rio because of similar issues of lack of transparency and really lack of engagement of the citizens in the planning process that affects the future of all of our citizens and wherever we live. And I think we've had two situations in our neighborhood in the last couple of years. One is the main gate rezoning that was imposed on us in late 2011, early 2012. And you see towers being built there now. And we, as a neighborhood, we're not opposed to redevelopment in this area, and we're not opposed to actually higher density development. But we had a lot of concerns about what the development would be. Would it be all students? Would it really, or truly a mixed use housing, retail, commercial space? And throughout the process of engagement for our plan amendment process, and we put up a lot of concerns, and we kept getting met by city staff saying, this is what council wants, and certain council members would say to us, that's what city staff is saying they want. But in the end, it was really what the developer who was paying for this whole process, for all legal fees, is what they wanted. And once our neighborhood plan amendment got passed over our objections, it went to the zoning examiner. And our neighborhood came out with a plan, an alternative plan, lots of density, but with the hopes that we would create more of a transition between the really high buildings and what was essentially single-story buildings on the western portion of this area. And through zoning exam hearings, I think we were heard, and yet it went back to mayor and council, and in the end, it was a 6-to-1 vote of supporting the zoning examiner's hearings. The only vote for the supporting hearing was Karen Ulick, who was the one solo vote. And at that time, you may know that we started a referendum process. We had 30 days. And in 30 days, we collected almost 12,000 signatures to overturn this rezoning decision by mayor and council. Due to a technicality, which I still don't really get, it was overturned by the city clerk and the city attorney. We went to our friend Bill Reisner. Bill took it into the various court levels, and we applied all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and each time we were denied justice on this, and that there's actually a way to have some sort of compromise vision of this area. After that point, mayor and council took one block out of this area, carved it out, and said, look, let's rethink this area, and let's think this is the most sensitive area next to the neighborhood. Let's think about that, and let's get back to meetings, zoning exam meetings, etc. And we did that, and they limited heights in this area, and so we went through all these meetings, and it seemed like there was agreement about what was going on. And at the mayor and council meeting, that it was in August of 2012. August 7th. There was a meeting, and there obviously was some action going on the floor of the council, and we were thinking, well, there's something going on, but what is it? But we felt like the mayor and council would abide by the unanimous decision that they had passed in May of that year to limit the heights. In the last minute, there was a jockeying by the property owners with some council members to raise the height another 40 feet to 130 feet. And there was a 4-3 vote, and we lost. But what really was lost was citizen participation, because we engaged throughout this whole process, and every time we felt like we were making movement, we just got pushed back. So trust was really damaged, because we felt like at least this one block area, we had an opportunity to make some impact that would actually affect our neighborhood and actually have reasonable scale development and use of development in that area. And then I'm going to go back in history briefly. And there's another thing, and I think all neighborhoods should be concerned about this, is the state of Arizona gave the cities of Arizona the right to create overlays. And overlays, all of our neighborhoods already have overlays. Our zoning is our overlay. In Western University, we have the historic preservation zone. We have, which is probably the most restrictive zone you can have. But they passed, city councils, past ones, and past staff, no one seems to know who actually wrote this, because no one's in the city of Tucson planning department anymore, passed the IID and the GIID, Greater Infill Incentive District, to promote a heaven for developers, because they really didn't have to go through neighborhood process, a public process that actually engaged neighborhoods so about their future and how we would develop in our neighborhoods. And neighborhood plans, which we all have neighborhood plans, those are a public process. Those came out of a public process that our neighbors, our citizens, created this plan, went to mayor and council, and got those approved. The overlays don't go through that process. That combined with, back in 2006, the city willing to sell just about any piece of real estate it could put its hands on, they sold one of our city streets, North 5th Avenue, a block of it, to a developer of the old YMCA building that was torn down for a previous project to the district. That allowed the assemblage of properties, and allowed, and then that combined with the infill incentive district overlay, allowed the district to be built the way it was, because it did not have to go through a neighborhood process. It did not have to engage a neighborhood. It was a one-way street, and it was heaven for developers, but it was certainly hell for neighborhoods. And I encourage neighborhoods to understand about overlays and land use codes, because it's really important to defending and making sure you have appropriate development in your neighborhoods. And then recently, in the last year, we had a mayor and council action to extend the termination date of the IID, which for another 5 years. But they promised that they would start a review within 6 months of the infill incentive district to ensure that it would be tweaked to make sure that appropriate development happened, and there was actually engagement of the citizens in its use. 6 months passed, a year passed, and then a group of us, including Ruth Beaker and some neighborhood activists, met with Councilmember Kozaczek. I said, Steve, this deadline is come and gone. Let's get this going, because it still sits here And it's a horrible tool for development. It has nothing for neighborhoods. It has everything for developers. And Steve and Karen both advocated in front of Mayor and Council, put this on the agenda and then send this to a planning commission with Ruth Beakerstead on the subcommittee about that, for that. And it seemed like that really there was so much resistance to change for a while in that process. But we are currently in a process now where it's been shifted to a task force and where it looks like there's some shifts happening. But I think it's really a reflection that we have to be on all the time, because what we're against is, it's not just the last few years, it's been decades. We've watched parts of neighborhoods disappear. We've watched inappropriate development happen and continue to happen. And we all want where we live to be places where we want to live and where we want others to live as well. And I think part of that happens when there's really an engagement of the citizens in the process of what our future is. And whether it's at El Rio, and whether it's in our neighborhoods, wherever it is, the engagement is really important, and a transparency of city engagement is really important too.
I was interested in you bringing up the El Rio situation, because I saw that article in the paper also. I probably should introduce myself before I jump into that. I am with the Neighborhood Infill Coalition. It's called NIC. We have been in effect since 2004. Obviously, with all the problems you're hearing, we have not created miracles. But we have been a group, we formed because a couple of years before then, City Council decided that infill development was the way to go. What they did not decide at that time was that it was important to figure out how to do it right. And so we have been struggling for a decade, monitoring what's going on, working with people like Chris. We understand the land use code. We as citizens figured out the land use code. And I am currently on Planning Commission, which is an appointment from hell, and I'm not going to be on there for long. I'm filling out somebody else's term, and I will not have Steve reappoint me. I can do better on the outside than you can on the inside, because on the inside, open meeting laws are thrown in your face every minute, and you can't talk to anybody, and you can't have any input. I can do better at the mic, coming from outside, in trying to have a voice. But in what he was talking about with the Rio Nuevo, with the district, which is that huge dorm on their doorstep, what I hear from staff is mistakes were made. I am so sick and tired of hearing city staff say to me things in the passive voice. Mistakes were made. Who in the hell makes the mistakes? And why do we not ever get accountability? And I believe the accountability has to come from mayor and council. Yes. We aren't going to get it from anybody else. And so to hide behind the passive voice, which I find staff doing, quite frankly, right now, I find staff a bigger problem than mayor and council. And I have been involved with problems now for years that are there. The Neighborhood Infill Coalition back in 2004 had a series of community workshops. And we came up with a document that was entitled Infill Development and Tucson's Future, a community-generated report. If you read it today, lots of it is still relevant. We haven't come far. And in fact, I think things are worse today than they were when we did this back in 2004. The city back in 2004 had a Department of Urban Planning and Design. we were able to work with a city department in talking about our problems. We got some really good things happening. My neighborhood got a neighborhood plan. And so squeaky wheels do get some attention sometimes. Those planners who remain are dispersed all through all the other departments. Place where part of them have been is in a department that used to be called Neighborhood Development Resources. Department of Neighborhood Resources do not resuscitate. DNR. That really was an omen for the future because it's gone. And what was left was in the Department of Community and Housing. They've advertised for a new director. They don't even mention the fact that that is a place where neighborhoods can go to get services. Where do neighborhoods go to get services now? I don't have a clue. And I don't know that mayor and council has a clue. This whole thing, over this time, this decade, that I have been really very much involved, as you can tell, with these whole issues, have been downhill for neighborhoods. Really downhill. And so the departments that we were most able to get some understandings and services from no longer exist for us. On top of that, we have had the recession. And I have to, in all ways, acknowledge that things are different. We do not have the resources in the city. The primary problem is that the city feels it has to be business friendly or else there's not going to be any services for us at all. But we have become marginalized as people who are citizens and who are the residents who live in this community. Okay, the Neighborhood Infill Coalition are not shrinking violets, as you can tell from my presentation here. We decided early this summer we have to move forward as citizens if we are going to ever have any of our concerns addressed. We sponsored three-hour workshops this summer. There are a few of you in the audience who participated in those. What we were there to do was to answer the question, how can Tucson citizens gain a more meaningful voice in City of Tucson decision-making? I have for you tonight, or this afternoon, a handout. I'll do it. I have more coming out. Old school teachers do taught at the University of teaching people to be teachers. If you've had those before, pass them on if you're part of our group so that there are enough, so that I had 40 copies and we're going to be running maybe short. We had 48 people who participated in the first two sessions where we did brainstorming, we did editing to try to get consensus on where are we going, what do we think is important. What you see there are 4 basic principles. There was a 2-page document that came out of this that we entitled This We Believe. Those 4 principles, which you can read for yourself, indicate where we as a community believe we have to go and what we must demand from our city government. Also from that, we are doing follow-ups. Back in 2004, when we had our series of workshops, we didn't do a follow-up. We learned. You can't just have a community meeting, people thinking about what's going on, and let it go. This time, we're not letting it go. We have, you see there, two options that are being studied at this time. Ceci is the chair of the first option. There's another group working on the second option. If any of you want to get involved as citizens, residents, we aren't talking about neighbors and neighborhoods. That has a negative connotation. We're talking about we live here, and we deserve to be noticed also. And we are going to have a follow-up meeting on November 16th that we welcome you all to. The other day, I got in the mail Richard Fembrace's mailer trying to say he has done important things and we should all be wanting to vote for him again. What I found significant was who he was endorsed by. He was endorsed by the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, International Union of Police Associations, SABA, Home Builders, Pima Area Labor Federation, Tucson's Association of Realtors, Postal Workers, Malta Housing Association, Firemen, Pipe Fitters. There is not one neighborhood association listed there. There is not any group that we have that talks about who are the residents and who are the citizens. We are off the radar screen. And that's why we're having this stuff happen to us. We do not have any political power. And when I look to see what he said on the back were the things that he's most proud of, none of them have anything to do with anything that was how people live in Ward 5 at this time. So, yeah, we are trying to move forward. We need all of your help. That anyone who is interested in this, please join with us. What we're trying to do is to come up with something that says the neighborhood people, the citizens, are as united from their special interests as the Chamber of Commerce is, or as the Metropolitan Pima.
Mario Gonzalez from C-FAIRR.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mario Gonzalez and I represent C-FAIRR. I'm the chairperson. I have a stake on these fights that are coming here. I don't belong to West University or the riderships or whatever, but I have been a city of Tucson. I retired from the city of Tucson after 30 years of service. And everything you've been saying, Bill, I agree. I've seen it personally about withholding information. The organization, the systems, if I may, are set up in government, be it at the federal level all the way down to local levels, to do two things. One, to the ability to create change, and two, the ability to prevent change. And so consequently, this is what happens. Okay? Now, when Bill was making all these pointing out whatever was going on in the city of Tucson with the records request, all the shenanigans that were going on and everything else, my question to the mayor and council, if I was addressing the mayor and council, I would ask was, why are these people still employed? I'm talking about starting with the city manager. Basically, he's deceiving the public and the mayor and council. Because the mayor and council, in fact, are representing the people. Casalimas. I mean, why is he employed? Why is the other guy from real estate, what's his name, Martinez or whatever his name is? Why is he employed? I mean, those are questions that the mayor and council needs to answer, because basically, those are the people that are deceiving the public. Okay? Now, I have a stake in El Rio. 35 years ago, I was, by the way, I have to make a divulsion here. I am one of those rich golfers that somebody alluded to at the mayor and council, that were rich and played golf. I'm one of them. Okay.
Bring your own cart?
Actually, I carried 1950 playing in El Rio. Okay. In 1978, playing golf, unfortunately, my son, 13 years old, was killed by lightning on the 14th hole at El Rio. And so El Rio is very dear to me. I don't want concrete covering it. I don't want the lie that City of Tucson says that will come out of selling it to the Grand Canyon or whatever. They're all lies. We know that. Okay? Now, C-FAIRR, we are a member of the El Rio Coalition. C-FAIRR was developed, we organized in 2010. Okay, we have some members here. Luis Gonzalez is a member. Ceci and Salomon are members. Alfonso Valenzuela. The majority, Sally and Luis Gonzalez, Representative Gonzalez, they're all members of C-FAIRR. C-FAIRR stands for the Coalition for Accountability, Integrity, Respect, and Responsibility. Our mission statement is to consistently serve the interest of our culturally diverse community by scrutinizing, evaluating, and demanding positive change to deficient public policy enacted by public officials in Arizona. And I'll say why in Arizona. To demand public officials abide by established universal principles and values that reflect decency, sensitivity, accountability, integrity, respect, and responsibility. Now, like I said, we organized in the latter part of 2010. We organized to counter the negative attitudes and actions of the crazies up in Phoenix. If you will recall, the Arizona legislature, led by the likes of Brewer, Pierce, Horn, and company, led to an assault on immigrants, Mexican Americans, women, gays, unions, education, and so forth and so on. During these turbulent times, hateful laws like 1070 and 2281 were enacted. We were ready to go to battle on the issues of the assault against the Tucson, of the education, ethnic studies assault here at TUSD. However, in early 2011, all hell broke loose at Pima College. If you will recall, the board, the Flores, what we call the Flores board, there were 5 members of that board on that one. Richard Fimbres, by the way, was one of the board members that hired Flores. And Flores, for everybody's information here, supposedly sexually harassed 8 women, outed 59 longtime administrators, gave out to his own cronies contracts illegally, and they changed the open enrollment process in Pima College and took away the federally assisted Pell Grants and loans and so forth in order to, like, they were trying to get rid of your riffraff out there, Francis, there? Well, they were trying to get rid of the riffraff in Pima College because Flores, with the help of Marshall Stewart, Gloria, and Marty Cortez and Richard Fimbres, he wanted to put on a 4-year elitist institution. We already have one. Why do we need another one? But in any event, so what happened was that we got a wind of them hiring 2 chancellors at $288,000 a year. Okay? And you were supposed to be paid for it. Us, all of us, in this room and everybody else outside of the room, through taxes. Flores was going to go home because he had had a bypass surgery or whatever, and Suzanne Miles was going to be the interim chancellor, and so they're both going to get $288,000. Flores was going to be at home doing whatever people do at home, getting $288,000, and Miles was going to continue his policies, whatever he wanted them. So we got involved. That was 2 years ago. We fortunately, we knew about what you were talking about, Bill. we knew about something called Title 39, Section 121, inspection of public records, okay? Which basically what it says, like Bill says, public records and other matters in the custody of any officer shall be open to inspection by any person at all times during office hours, all times. Well, I guess Pima College wasn't as smart as City of Tucson, so we managed to get a whole bunch of records. We managed to get approximately, in a report that we wrote, about 360 pages worth of allegations, okay? We sent it to everybody in the world that we thought might have a shot at doing an investigation. All we wanted, I mean, all we asked for, we went to the board numerous times asking them, hey, do an outside investigation, independent, not inside, outside investigation. And you know what? If the allegations of sexual harassment, contract violations, out in this and that, corrupt hiring process, if it's all lies, fine, we'll go away, you know, whatever. They said no. They never responded to us. Like you guys, the mayor and council doesn't respond. Well, you know, they didn't either. What we did is we developed this report. We sent it to the Department of Education, to Tom Horn, to Lawal, to everybody, Anita Lohr, everybody, not Anita Lohr. What's her name, the other lady? Artumanian. And so, in any event, finally, you know, people use excuses, no, we can't do that, or whatever, da, da, da. Finally, an organization called the Higher Learning Commission, which is the accreditor for the college, said, hey, I think you guys got something here. I said, yeah. I said, we don't know, but this is what we hear. Okay, so check it out. So they sent a team. They sent a team of very, very, very astute, very knowledgeable people, Dr. Nelson, Dr. Gonzalez, Garcia, I'm sorry, no, Gonzalez. And then a couple other people. They did a cursory investigation based only on the report that we had sent in. And lo and behold, they found egregious violations, where I'm sure all of you know that the college was placed on probation in April the 6th, for 2 years, okay? In the meantime, there have been 5 people that have been fired, terminated, or retired, let go, whatever, but they're no longer in the college. They were involved in some of these shenanigans. This is why I say that the mayor and council can, in fact, ask for investigations on these people that are being withholding, or doing different things that are wrong or whatever, because they're deceiving the public. In any event, to this point that they have a probation, they're used to their probation. Been 2 years since we've been messing around with it, still dealing with this thing, okay? We're at the point now where we're in the process of writing again now to the Department of Education Civil Rights Division, because we believe that there have been some civil rights violations against minorities and women, specifically, okay, on the issue of federal financial assistance and on the open enrollment process. Where there are also other criterion violations that have occurred since the college has been placed on probation of April. And we have partnered with other organizations in the community to start a recall effort against the existing Flores board, if I may, against Longoria, Scott Stewart, Marty Cortez, and Brenda Even. Except that Brenda Even is running at the next election, so I guess what's going to happen, they don't have to recall her, but they will be then putting a candidate against her. But I think everybody needs to be aware here, because this is not a neighborhood issue, it's not a boundary issue, this is a Pima County-wide situation that we're all being hurt with, and frankly, it's a disgrace what's going on out there. So this is where we're at.
I just wanted to add very quickly, there is a connection between the El Rio Coalition and Pima College, because we found a letter from this Miles woman to the city saying, we support GCU, this is a great thing. I called her up, and I said, I'm from the neighborhood, I just want to know, you wrote this letter saying you support GCU, why? She said, well, someone from the city told me to write this letter. That's why she wrote the letter.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, so, I want to thank everybody here, and if anybody wants to get involved on voting for or against a recall, whatever the people, whatever, we really appreciate it. We have to change that. We have to change the culture and the board members there. Okay. Thank you.
This is a citywide issue on many, many levels that we're all experiencing, as Ruth said. The residents, the taxpayers, the citizens of this community are not being heard, and that's what it's about. We need to be heard. We need to be able to communicate with our elected officials, our staff, and have them responsive to what we want. So again, thank the speakers so much. So thank you again. We are limited again with time, and we ran a little bit over, but this has been wonderful. So those of you that need to go, I have also asked the mayor and council. We've sent a number of letters. The last one we sent to the mayor and council asking for a public hearing to discuss the El Rio issue. We've not heard from anyone. We sent it to the mayor and to all the council members. We have also, there's a meeting because the anniversary is coming up. On the 23rd, today's the 20th, the 23rd will be a year since the mayor and council voted on October 23rd for the immediate planning of El Rio. We want the council to, one, reaffirm that vote, that's one. Two, rescind or deal with how they wanted to make the vote on getting rid of El Rio, the vote on May 14th, to rescind that vote. That puts El Rio out in the block. So there's just two things. And the third is be open with your public. Be open to what they have to say. They have got so much information. They have dealt on so many issues. They have put reports together. They have written to accreditations committees. They have amassed all this information to present to you. They're smart. Listen to them. That's all we want. Three things. Three things. So I hope that you can join us on October 22nd, that's Tuesday, at the next mayor and council meeting. We have a press conference to ask for those three things and to listen to the community. And there's also a mayor and council meeting that day at 5:30. Again, the only recourse as citizens that we have to address the mayor and council is during the call to the audience. Half an hour for the whole community to stand up. It's my turn, let me speak. It should be longer. But that's all we have to, again, ask the mayor and council, since we have no public hearing, that's the only opportunity we have. The first conference is going to be at 4:30.
I also would like to add, mayor and council now are only meeting twice a month.
Yeah,
They used to meet 4 times a month.
Now it's twice.
And now it's twice, so that the time for the call to the audiences has basically been reduced by half. The mayor has full control over who he chooses to have come to the mic. He has, as I understand, and Karen's nodding, that he has control over whether it can be more than half an hour also. I haven't heard anybody.
I emailed you back. I emailed you back about that. And said I signed a letter saying
right.
I did.
Yes, you did. These two people that back here said, yes, they understood why the public might be concerned about this. I haven't heard any explanation ever on why, ever since I've been involved, mayor and council always had business that seemed to necessitate having weekly meetings 4 times a month. Why now there only is enough business to keep things going twice a month? I haven't seen any description of why that is used. I also have a very, very concerned, share your concern at study sessions. It seems stuff happens at study sessions that are of more substance than we would expect to be something that is being talked about at a study session. And the only way you as a citizen get to say anything at a study session is if you have made a deal with a council person prior to that to have a chance to come to the mic. I think that's another issue that we really should be concerned about as a citizen, having a voice in responding to our mayor and council.
Before we get kicked out, we've got some questions for about 10 minutes. I know, Beryl?
I heard scuttlebutt, and I don't know how true it is, they're talking about cutting back on the call to audience even more, and maybe even eliminating it. I heard that as a rumor. I don't know if it is true, but if it is, that's.
The only discussion that I've had about the call to the audience in the last 2 weeks was, I'm gonna write a letter with another council member, and I can't remember which one it is. We're gonna ask the mayor to extend call to the audience to at least 45 minutes if we run over. So I already asked that, I emailed Ruth this week about that, and that's the only thing that I had about call to the audience this week, Carol.
I'm just saying that's the scuttlebutt out there.
Terry?
Yes, I have a question. Last time I was on TRIO's website, I saw that Mayor Rothschild is still on the board of directors. Bill, can you advise if that's a conflict of interest? I know we've spoken about it before, that because he's on the board of directors, he's part of that private organization, and therefore, any information that he's privy to in that capacity, he could maybe not share with the public because of his relationship? Can you just...
I don't know what their internal rules would be on that, and I really don't know what his position is. He's not only on the board, but he's on that special inside circle that you pay $50,000 to be on that thing, but maybe they comped it, too. Yeah. And then the general state conflict of interest laws apply, so that if there's anything that he would do, maybe there with the city that would make money for him, it would apply. But I kind of doubt that's it. But I'm not sure why he's there, other than all the big shots are there. But who actually makes the money and doing stuff in the back, none of us will ever find out, because they are a private outfit.
Are those records open to public inspection when we get into public-private partnerships like that?
Which one?
Like TRIO?
I don't think so.
No.
So even though there's public money invested in there, still, because that's the impression I get from the city, but I haven't known whether that's a fact. Because they were scrambling, when they were packing up all the boxes, we were down there going through as much as we could and making copies as fast as possible, but
yeah, I don't.
haven't known that we could follow through.
The only thing that we've said when I submitted the letter was that they didn't get any city money, so that they weren't going to give us any records, that they didn't go by that clause. Now, the county does give them money.
They get money from the county or Valley and around.
Yeah, so I don't know if push comes to shove, but I know that's what they say, and you've got to spend a lot of money to fight them to find otherwise. One of the things I wanted to mention, sort of interesting, if you talk to any city council person or the mayor, I think they've all, they'll say the El Rio deal is dead. We're not negotiating that with Grand Canyon. That's what they'll tell you. Wouldn't you tell me that?
I think I have.
You have told me that, yes. Exactly. But the council and mayor haven't revoked that vote. There was an instruction to the staff to negotiate that.
Can I interject? The motion was, and this is something I have learned, and you'll notice this the way we operate. When the city attorney says, let's go into executive session, we say we want to discuss everything we can out front and open before the public, before we go into executive session. Because this is a horrible position to not be able to just tell you exactly what went on in executive session. But the motion was to continue discussions with Grand Canyon University. Okay, now the problem is, you don't know what that means because it was exec session, and I think you're right. We just need to make it crystal clear by bringing it back and saying, this is off the table. But we did not say in that motion, nor can I tell you the intent or the effect of the motion was not to proceed to sell or lease El Rio. So, but
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I'm just gonna ask it from the layperson. When you make an offer, that was a proposal. That was sent on May 8th. That is, wait, Karen. That's going to GCU. That's an offer that's being made to them. And as we have negotiated, I negotiated my house deal. When you put an offer in there, that's the top. You negotiate now, but you never negotiate up.
Let me explain that. The staff brought that lousy deal that we're all dissecting now to mayor and council, okay? And we looked at it. And I can only say to you, the tenor of the discussion and the questions raised, because we were getting, Scott sent an email to me, all kinds of really legitimate concerns as we were going in, gathering up emails. Oh my gosh, I got a call.
But we haven't gotten those emails.
No, but listen, yes, and you deserve those, believe me. But the point is, the staff brought this to us to see whether we would ratify this draft they put together, okay? We did not, the city did not, the mayor and council did not say, oh, all right, good deal. We said, let's keep the door open and talking with Grand Canyon, continue due diligence to protect the city and the community's interests, and release all information that we can to the public. That was the mayor and council motion. I just want to, now, should we come back and just make it crystal clear? Absolutely. Should we maybe never, ever, ever go into executive session again, is what I'm thinking, but yeah.
This is now October.
Right.
The city isn't turning over some documents because they said there was a vote by you in executive council, in executive session. They're using the existence that's still alive as a shield.
I'm telling you, that is so inconvenient for me, because I'd much rather you have everything. That is so freaking inconvenient for me. I would much rather you have
I think we have a lot.
Let him speak here first. He's been asking to speak before.
I told you. Bill, and this is probably a legal question. I thought that in executive session you could not take a vote.
That's right.
So who's lying?
I think that entire executive session was illegal because it violates a case that I cited in court that concerned the Tankerverdy's school district. But again, somebody's got to go to court to pry that thing loose because they roll over all the rules.
Tina.
I would just let you guys know, although I think Mr. Castellanos doesn't know this, there is the executive session as it pertains to negotiations and personnel matters and all of that is a tool. There is no requirement by law that you must go into executive session to discuss sale or lease of anything. Okay, that is not a requirement. It is simply a tool to be used to do the negotiation. But in this case, the negotiation was already done at the most important level, which is what is the price we're willing to offer. So where's the need for executive session?
So go with John and then with Scott and then,
My question is just basic and simple. And first, before I give the question, I've been working with Bill since 2004 on election fraud that exists. I'm not saying in the city. I think the city does a pretty good overall job. Yeah, we need more transparency. The county, I wouldn't trust in either election. But there's a bigger problem here. How do activists like me and other people in this room keep fighting this thing when our lawyers don't get paid, even when we win.
Right.
Where am I going to pull no lawyer? This guy is 70 years old. Okay? Where are we going to find other people like him? How can we win a case 100% and say, you're not going to get paid?
Right.
And my question, what are we going to do about this? Okay? Secondly, you know, I consider a lot of people in the council friends of mine. I think we got good people there. But sometimes I wonder judgment. You know, I believe in the 3 C's. What? Character, capacity, and credibility. When I look at somebody, I'm not going to deal with this guy. He has no capacity. Or his credibility is bullshit. Your credibility is in danger. Your credibility is in danger. Everybody in that council. Because you listen to liars and thieves who bring, I filmed the trial. I thought I was going to go in there for 15 minutes. I filmed depositions, 2.5 hours of this guy who misled the city manager, okay? Put this film up. Where's the media? You know, to me, we live in an area that our democracy has been subverted by special interest in money. I am tired of Trio doing what they're doing. I'm tired of Huckleberry and his deals. If this deal had fallen through, easily $100 million lost over the next 45 years, okay? This thing with the $250 million of that money that was squandered, well, you need to look back because your credibility is in danger. Everybody's credibility in that council. You got to make some heads roll. What did you learn from all of this? You know? I still have faith in you that you're going to go back and others in that council. And we're going to get this thing straightened up and we're going to make some head rolls and we're going to get policy and we're going to make sure that Bill gets paid because he brought a righteous case by righteous people. And you know what? We're dwindling. We're tired. And we got to do something. And thank you.
And we've got him to entertain that that request. At the time that he made it, several of us, including me, said if we're going to cut the meetings in half, we need to double the time for call to the audience. The city charter is so clear about the mayor's authorities, and I don't want to throw Jonathan, you know, out on a heap or anything. I mean, he's been responsive. I think he'll hear the concerns, and I think we can work with him. And I think if he recognizes how very important this is to folks, that he'll extend it, and maybe he'll even revert back to weekly. But you know, it's a charter authority that our mayor has.
Some other questions? How about a couple more questions? Burning questions?
Just to follow up on what Karen just said, can he go back to calling the cards in order that the people signed up instead of ruffling through them?
Yes.
And picking and choosing that is extremely prejudicial. And he knows all of our faces already. He's not going to call on us. Last time I called the audience, a couple of council members, I won't say who they were rolling their eyes at me. But, you know, so I think that is important because people go down there. I used to go down there early so I could get on the queue.
I think it'd be a very powerful document from this entire coalition, which is much bigger, obviously, than the folks in this room, to say this is what we want out of public participation, including everybody gets to be heard in the order that they get there, and then I think we put that in front of the mayor and ask him to consider that, absolutely.
Any other questions?
As a business professional that would carry errors and omissions insurance, it kind of bothers me that there's a conflict under, I know Bill didn't bring it up, but under tort liability, that, you know, the principal is responsible for the actions of their sub-agents or their agents. And even inasmuch as elected officials would be, you know, covered or challenged on that issue, I think it's imperative that those officials ask the city attorney, what is my recourse? What is my liability here? And what is my liability against these individuals that have countermanded something that was not my true intent? So that being said, that's, you know, an instructive way to try to correct things within the system. You know, and to me, just being here as a passive observer to some of these incidents of fact that have been brought up, I really don't see that there's any case for plausible deniability. It's really, really damning. And it's embarrassing for all of us, because if we don't act, you know, aggressively, you know, then we share in that as an act of an error of omission.
Yeah.
You know.
Just one other thing, and the charter is so important. Several years ago, there were charter amendments suggested, mainly by business leaders, right? The charter gives, it's very clear in terms of the authority of the mayor and council. We can fire the city attorney, the city manager. We have fired 2 in the last 4 years.
Fire the city attorney, please.
Yeah.
Fire the city attorney.
And otherwise, the city, it's a strong measure form of government. Our constitution, if you will, is set up in the way that we are experiencing it. So sometimes the bigger thing for the group.
Questions and you know, I'm going to go back to you, and I'm sorry, you know, you are here and you participated. But I think you've heard that before. You've heard it individually from people, you've heard it from organizations. I think the time of justifying or that the charter and that and the charter this, for my purposes, are over. You know what needs to be done. You know what needs to be done. You know other council people know what needs to be done. We've communicated. I'm sure you communicated. We've communicated in many, many different ways and forms, but we haven't been heard. That's not an issue. That's an issue here. That we have not been heard. We've been dismissed. We've been ignored. We've been pushed to the side. And that, you know, and to justify, I find that just, in my mind, doesn't. It's action time. And I think the coalition and people that have been working in other groups really are not going to sit still anymore. They are ready to go to whatever lengths, to go to the meetings. And that's really what it's about. And, you know, there's some, and I'm sorry for taking some more time for questions, but we do have to leave here at 4:30. Is there any other burning question?
I got one.
Okay.
I got one for
And then Alfonso.
Mr. Garcia. You got fresh eyes. You're a candidate. You just saw some really incredible presentations by an incredible lawyer and people who really care and love this community as you do. What are your thoughts on what you've learned today?
Well, I don't think, I'm not here to campaign, I'm here to...
No, but you're a citizen.
And I am a citizen.
Yeah.
I live just up the street, and I'm very concerned. It's disheartening, and I think your point was well met. We as citizens, we as Tucsonans, we bear the responsibility for this. Every 2 years, we have an opportunity to choose who works for us. And it's encouraging. I've actually got 2 specific questions I want to talk to you all about after the meeting. But it is, there's an opportunity here, and we're doing a gut check right now as Tucson is what we want to be. So I'd be happy to talk to you individually, but I don't think it's appropriate to be here to campaign.
That last question, Alfonso.
No, I just want to make a comment. I used to be part of the media. And throughout all of these discussions concerning all the different issues, I'm going to suggest that all of us here, if you have sons and daughters, if you have grandchildren, cousins, you tell those young people, you need to get involved. Because I see it all across these issues. The young people are missing somehow. And we can't always blame the social media. You know, that's really interesting because they're so busy with that, but these are issues that affect everybody in the community. So I'm recommending that all of us go here, leave here, tell at least 3 people, you have to get involved. You must get involved because you're supposed to be the future.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget the mayor and council meeting and the press conference, please. 4:30.